Welcome back. We are glad you are still keeping us company. We move on to the next segment, and this is still in the headlines, where we get to let you know what the papers have for us today. The hashtag still remains to be Good Morning Kenya on Twitter. Our official station handle is at KBC Channel 1. I have a copy of the Daily Nation. Most of the stories here are just in regards to the Mashujaa Day celebrations that happened yesterday in Kenyatta County. Uhuru goodies. All this has been outlined on the first 9 pages of this particular daily. Of course, we'll be going through a quick recap of what, and especially so what was pulled out from the president's speech. But aside from that, there is a story here concerning the Ndishu brothers over the recent incident concerning an assault against 2 sisters who have been formally identified as the Murgor sisters. And that story has been covered also here. We'll be getting to it in a bit. And finally, the other story here is in regards to the gold mining in Migori and the mercury that they are using, which has been termed as a silent killer that, they have been, or rather they find necessary to use when it comes to the process of mining this gold in this particular area. That is basically the front page of the Daily Nation for you today. More details coming up in a bit. Victor.
Nothing much, really. Still on the front page of the Star newspaper, Uhuru's goodies to Kenyans on his last Mashujaa Day. Government will pump 8 billion shillings in building classrooms, 1 billion shillings for each for tea and coffee sectors, and another 1.5 billion shillings for sugar. Now, the 26 billion shillings President Uhuru Kenyatta unveiled a 13-point intervention to steady economy. I will give you more details shortly. Kirinyaga gets to blow hot and cold, but no storms. Just like the other day's weather, it was hot. It was cold in the morning, but later on it opened up and it was hot. And just the same way, the ground was equally the same. DP Ruto pours praises on Uhuru 2-term projects. Deputy President William Ruto made an about turn over President Uhuru Kenyatta's performance in his second term and showered the head of state with praises during the Mashujaa Day celebrations at Wanguru Stadium in Kirinyaga County. That is yesterday. Ruto said that the country has seen what he termed as unprecedented transformation in the last 9 years. Okay, and still on the front page, anger is defiled teenager buried after childbirth. Another defiled and pregnant Baringo schoolgirl has been buried after she died of childbirth complications. Mourners were overcome by grief and outrage. That's on the front page of the Star newspaper. Something quite interesting here, and also important to note, not an inch less or inch more, Uhuru tells Somalia. President Uhuru Kenyatta has committed to protecting Kenya's territorial integrity, vowing not even an inch of the country's geographical area will be lost to aggressors. The president, who was speaking yesterday in Kirinyaga, said that since attainment of independence, experienced territorial aggressions to the sanctity of the country's borders. The message said that, and I quote, that the message of our founding fathers to these aggressors was simple: not an inch less, not an inch more. And this is the message that must reverberate across the collective quarters that are bent on known as the Republic of Kenya. So that is the president's word as far as the issue of the Somalia-Kenya border dispute is concerned. Okay, now quickly, before I give it to you, Regina, let me give you some of the interventions that President Kenyatta put in place to spur the economic growth. One is increase the cash transaction reporting threshold from 1 million shillings. Number 2, suspension of credit reference bureaus listing for loan defaulters below 5 million shillings. Reduction of the cost of electricity by 30% by December 24th. Allocation of 10 billion shillings for the third phase of the Kazi Mtaani program, allocation of 8 billion shillings for CBC infrastructure program, and allocation of 1.5 billion shillings for the National Livestock Offtake program, and allocation of 1 billion shillings for the coffee subsector. Allocation of 1.5 billion shillings for the sugar sector, allocation of 1 billion shillings for fertilizer subsidy for tea farmers, and finally allocation of 3.2 billion shillings for construction of 50 level 3 hospitals. Those are some of the interventions that President Uhuru Kenyatta put in place to spur economic growth in the targeted for the next 10 months. Regina.
Talking about that particular economic stimulus package, remember this is not the first. We've had a similar one, especially after the country confirmed its first case of COVID-19 and the interventions that were put in place. So from President Uhuru Kenyatta's speech there, this particular copy of the Standard has chosen to go with the take home from this the 13 key interventions by the president. That is what we have on the front page, and as you've rightfully put, you've just mentioned but a few of what has been captured, but in general the gainers are the agriculture sector, education, health, as well as matters energy, and digital services, banking and credit and such. We're going to be unpacking that, and I'm sure being Thursday is a business day here, we're going to be unpacking the president's speech and just looking at sector by sector what has been done, what inroads have been done, and what impact this key interventions we have on those various sectors, as well as the people that rely on the sector, so to speak, directly and indirectly. Just borrowing from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, numbers for 2020, it gave us a glimpse of what, the adversely affected sectors there. And I'd want to borrow from some of the highlights there, given sectors that have recorded growth, while sectors that have really had a slump owing to matters of COVID-19. Let's start off with the issue of the tourism sector, whose earnings dropped by 43.9% to 91.7 billion in 2020. Remember, by the end of the financial year 2019-2020, the tourism sector before then had targeted to increase its contribution to GDP by at least to contribute at least 15% to GDP, and this was not attainable because of the COVID-19 disruptions that were characterized, with stifled growth. Travel across the globe. Across the globe there. We're seeing things coming up. The tourism sector has received the worst of the COVID-19 disruptions, not just in Kenya, but also across the globe. Then in as far as information and communication, the sector recorded a slowed growth of 4.8% in 2020 compared to 7.5% growth in 2019. When you talk about ICT, we talk about mobile penetration, talk about digital, fintech and such. Internet services, however, increased in 2020 from 302 to 366. Why? The work from home, the increase in digital services and digital payments. Also, internet subscriptions increased. In-person learning was suspended, and some schools began, online classes and such. So it was quite a mix when it comes to the matters information and communication sector. However, the construction sector in itself grew. As you can see, we have seen quite some infrastructural projects still underway there. It grew by 11.8% in 2020 compared to a growth of 5.6%. When government was actually making its budgetary allocations for that particular financial year, the infrastructure sector was one of the key gainers there. And as far as agriculture, forestry and fishing was concerned, also this grew despite the locust invasion that saw us lose a lot in as far as our harvest, and actually before even harvest was happening, but the sector grew because we had a favorable weather condition, and it grew by 4%. However, manufacturing, and this is a sector that has been having a conversation with even the executive, pointing out a few issues. The issue of cost of energy being too high, unsustainable, with the reduction of work hours owing to the COVID-19 measures there with the curfew and such. They have been suffering the same fate tourism sector there. So the gross value added contracted, that shrunk by 0.1% in 2020 compared to 2.5% in 2019. Growth slowed down from 2.8% in 2019 to 0.2% in 2020, and jobs declined by 10%. So looking at the average, importance or average, we can only do better with the 13 key interventions that have taken care of matters, livestock, coffee, sugar, education, banking sector, and energy. Some good news both for manufacturers, Victor, as well as households, is that the stabilization of petroleum prices and 30% reduction of electricity prices by December. If we do quick math, 30% of, if you pay a bill of 1,000 bob, it will be less 30% come December. And this will mean a lot for not only just manufacturers, but also Kenyans who have been decrying the high cost of living. And we know power, electricity is everything. That's just a quick summary and detail of the 13 key interventions by the president, borrowing from his speech. Remember, in our coverage of BizCheck as well as Business Insight tonight, we're going to be talking matters business will be better placed to unpack this and the ripple effect it will have going forward. Jane.
Now, to just add on to what the president has had to say rather yesterday in regards to, some of the things that were picked up from his speech. And before we even get to the, let me just start with that. And we could look at this matter concerning the CBC. There has been a lot that people have had to say about CBC. We've had a huge part of the population saying that we need to revert back to 844 because we're not ready for CBC, and others saying CBC is progressive and therefore we should stick with it. And in his speech, President Kenyatta yesterday affirmed that the government is not going to abandon the CBC curriculum, and went ahead to allocate another 8 billion Kenya shillings, which will be directed towards the construction of 10,000 classrooms ahead of the rolling out of the grade 5s, who have just a year to go before they transition to junior secondary, which will be in 2023. So plans concerning further developing CBC are underway, and when it comes to reverting back to 844, we should just kiss that bye-bye, in as much as there is also the parent that went to court challenging the new school syllabus. The president did affirm that we are not going to revert back to this. And on some bit of politics was a bit interesting, the way we did see Deputy President shower President Kenyatta with praises. Some people and critics for that matter came out to say that this was seemingly a way of the Deputy President calling for a political truce ahead of the 2022 general elections. As we gear up for that, he went on to say that, President Kenyatta has his legacy will be unparalleled, adding that the country has seen unprecedented transformation in the last 9 years that he has been at the helm. He is celebrated as our leader, and his place in history is secure and prominent. He, however, did not go into the details of politicking about his succession come 2022. So we are yet to see what more critics have to say about this when it comes to politics. And maybe, Victor, you could actually just come in at this particular point. Do critics have some truth when they say that this was sort of Deputy President reaching out for a political truce?
Well, at that particular point, nobody expected, even you didn't expect Deputy President William Ruto to go and just bombard his boss on a national event like that one of yesterday. The only thing that the Deputy President had to do was to do the best.
And he did?
He did. Ask me about how he handled it.
How did he handle it?
Okay. It has been political. Right now it's political season, and every time the Deputy President go out there to voters, he will speak on that end, and somebody said that he's speaking from both sides from both ends of his mouth. That is political. At that particular point yesterday, he had that responsibility to articulate the government's agenda. And of course, your boss is sitting right behind you.
To be the Deputy President.
Exactly. And if you heard what he said, that, Mr. President, I am here and I'm ready to continue the legacy come next year if I'm elected the president. It was a well-coined kind of campaign, you know, utterance, and for those people who listened to that speech pretty well, they never saw it coming. So he was so smart in his delivery of that particular point. And later on, just before that, ODM leader Raila Odinga said that, you know what, I'm a friend of the mountain. Then the deputy president's time came, and he said, you know what, I'm ready to continue with the legacy. Ask me if the deputy president played it smart. Yes, he did. And, you know, they just didn't want to get into moral politics. And if you looked at what the president said, yesterday he didn't go off cuff.
Yeah.
He finished his official speech and that was it. He didn't go off cuff. He's been always trying to shy away from the politics of Mount Kenya region. You know, the big boys, you go out there and talk to the people. Yesterday, it was a national event. He articulated the government 13-point agenda, and that was that, kaput.
And you know, this just clearly went to reaffirm even what Kenyatta governor had said when it comes to Mashujaa Day.
Yeah.
Politics aside.
Politics aside.
We are here to mark Mashujaa Day, and that is what it should be. Any other local politics, please pick them up the next day. And I think we saw that looking at our president and the deputy president in light of what we have been seeing in the recent past.
He didn't touch on politics even a bit.
Campaigning.
None of that.
Yeah. And you know, that I think that's also one of the reasons we had such a peaceful Mashujaa Day, because we need to remember that these two gentlemen hold such power among the population.
Yeah.
So if the president was to say something that would tick the people off, we'd see supporters of deputy president actually act off of that.
Right.
So, you know, Mashujaa.
Also want to remind you that we saw a similar kind of move in Kisumu.
Contrary.
And I think the political class, you see, when you're playing a game of chess, if you have played a game of chess, you move what you can move, but you try and ensure that no one gets to the queen. So they were playing a game there, and I like what Victor has said. I mean, you cannot afford to antagonize such a crowd at a national event. You know, keep your politics aside. This is something that is meant, you are celebrating our heroes and heroines, you know, and you're playing your role as a deputy president. I tend to think that was a wise move. Had he acted in any other manner, well, he would have lost ground that he has gained over the years. And also, even the camaraderie that you saw between ODM leader as well as Deputy President William Ruto and the president, there everybody put their best foot forward for the sake of the country. And I liked that. That is what we talk about when we say nationalism, patriotism, that we put our differences aside and work to a common goal. I found that to be very, you know, wise. That actually was a wise move by all the political elites that were attending that particular feat. You know, you need to learn to play your game and play it well.
And you know what, Regina, the president is quite much aware that he's being pushed to make certain sentiments.
Indeed.
He's aware.
Indeed, he knows. You know,
I think they both know.
They both know.
They both know.
And if you listen to
and even the former premier for that matter.
Yes, and if you listen to the president, when the deputy president and ODM leader had already spoken and the president was speaking, he made it very, very clear that this is the reason why we are here today. He stuck to his speech, he delivered his speech, even being poked. You know, when they say, mimi niko tayari, you know, I'm a friend to Mount Kenya, nitaendelea kusupport agenda ya president, then the other person comes out and says, oh, the mountain, la 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 la. President was also very smart. Remember, if today President Uhuru Kenyatta was to come out and say, you know what, my term ends at this point, and I'd want so and so to take up after me. It is it. Panic, you know, it would change the whole game.
The country.
Right now we are playing what, if you play pool, tunaficha white.
I think it's too early.
Yes, it's too early. It's too early.
We don't need to preempt anything.
Hypothetically speaking.
Exactly. With 10 months to go, wow.
It's too early. So tuendelea mchezo ya kuficha white, but lazima tuweke white ball na black ball. So we will know Bivu na Mbichi before too long. But I liked what I saw. I liked what I saw.
Very peaceful, all about the country. Victor.
Okay. Actually, yesterday when we were coming back, we were just making fun of something. You remember the GSU water tankers? They were parked somewhere and they did not do any job. So people said that they had a trip to Kirinyaga and back to Nairobi without doing anything. It was quite peaceful. After that, everybody just went back home and it was it.
Victor, since you were on ground, before we leave the Mashujaa Day issue, the performances there was a lot of talk about the performances on ground. We had Ben Gedai. We had Ben Gedai, and I like the question that you asked him, like, how does he feel when he receives all this criticism, when a few Kenyans come out and blame him for current, misfortunes, and as far as the economy is concerned, the Tano Terror slogan and such. But we saw a mixture of young and old, even in the performance that the Mwomboko performance there, usually performed by the older class, but in these Mashujaa Day celebrations, we saw young people also participate in that traditional dance. And it got me thinking that we have come of age where we are passing down our traditions and culture to our youth. What do you think about the performances there?
Yeah, live on the ground, it was fantastic. One thing that amazed me was I saw some old ladies and gents there at the age of 60s, 70s, somewhat in their early 80s. They were doing the moves, it was well articulated, and it got me thinking, if these old people were getting the moves right, and to see all of them were choreographed. We are told that they had some professional dance trainers who trained them on the moves, the timings, and what have you. And you could see them getting it right. So if those people could get it right at that age, you could see the shows doing the moves pretty well. It was fantastic, and the crowd was, charged. Everybody was peaceful. And after the event, the kids, just the kids, they started rolling in the grass and just enjoying the whole environment. So the whole of that place was just fantastic. Kirinyaga, asanteni sana. Mashujaa Day was peaceful and it ended well, how it started.
So have you left, you're no longer using Victor Minor Oloo? Remember you told me, you actually announced to the nation that you were going by the name Victor Minor Oloo, the name that you were given down in Kirinyaga County.
Yeah, that one, as soon as I left that place, it ended at that point. It was
temporal?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we also need to drop our other names that we also acquired since we were broadcasting live from Nairobi. We also got names here, so we will discuss about that after the show. To you.
I'm so curious to hear that. Okay, talk of politics. Ruto makes U-turn, says Uhuru legacy prominent. DP had 4 days ago, term President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, quote unquote, matapeli, to mean conmen. But yesterday, the deputy president made a U-turn and praised President Kenyatta's performance in his second term and showered the head of state with praises during Mashujaa Day celebrations, something we've just talked about. Of course, he had no option either way. Again, the deputy talk of ODM leader Raila Odinga. I'm a friend of Mount Kenya, says Raila Odinga. Speaking at Wanguru Stadium yesterday, he said that he recalled how he spearheaded Kibaki's campaigns after the former president's involvement in a road accident, and Kibaki was flown to London, for those who can remember, for treatment, and less than a month to the polls, and later on confined to a wheelchair, putting Raila and other NAC luminaries at the center of the campaigns, if you can remember that very well, in 2002. So that's how it played out there in politics. There's something interesting. XCJ Mutunga to bring back exiled Miguna from Canada. So former Chief Justice Willie Mutunga is set to travel to Canada and will return with exiled firebrand political activist and lawyer Miguna on November 16th. So Mutunga announced on Wednesday that his trip is to ensure that Miguna is allowed entry into the country. There are various court orders that allow Miguna to return to Kenya, but they have been ignored by the state. That's according to former CJ Mutunga. It will be interesting.
And especially at such a time.
It will be interesting. I mean, let's wait and see how it will...
Like General.
Yeah, let's wait and see how it will, whether he'll be allowed back to the country or not. Let's take a break, and when we come back, much more on the other side.